And just like that, the year of the dragon is coming to an end. But it's not the end for Dragon's Dogma 2. We are now 9 months after release, and while many had hope, including myself, that we would get a glimpse of what the DLC could look like before year's end, that sadly never happened. But one thing that became clear to me after the Game Awards is that Capcom's lineup of games for 2025 leaves plenty of room for an upcoming DLC. Wilds releases late February, and that makes this summer a reasonable release timeframe for the DLC. But even though we're getting complete radio silence from Capcom when it comes to updates or any hint that they are working on an expansion, other sources reveal that DLC might be closer than we think. On the 25th of December, Tadashi Makino, the composer for Dark Arisen and Dragon's Dogma Online, posted this on X. Happy holidays, we will be releasing this newly added melody in advance, and the wonderful guests who appeared in the original work will be gathering again. Please wait a little longer until the full version comes out. The new soundtrack they tease here is actually a remake of the original End of Struggle from Dark Arisen, combined with the newer version from Dragon's Dogma Online. But why are they releasing this now? Maybe this is a hint we'll finally get the missing lore that would unite Dark Arisen and DDon in an upcoming expansion. There are certainly many hints towards this theory in the sequel already, and Zappiroth, a good friend of the channel, have the knowledge needed to help us connect the missing pieces. And he have shared a lot of his theories on his channel already. There is a lot to unpack here, so we'll get back to this later in the video. But first, let's take a look at something equally interesting. A couple of months ago, this redditor posted the following. Apparently, somebody managed to data mine the pre-release version of the game and found text within the code that simply states multiplayer mode Tower of the New Moon. Now, while multiplayer is a pretty divisive topic within the community, the way this is presented as a closed area where multiplayer is enabled makes it a very approachable solution. We have to remember that Capcom already created a successful multiplayer experience in the online version, and for players who want to try this hidden gem for themselves, its current state, restored by devoted members of the community, is getting close to the original version of the game with almost all the storyline mechanics and quests restored. I will provide links in the description, so check that out if you like. But let's talk about the possibility of multiplayer in the sequel. Could this be an endgame dungeon where we fight endless waves of monsters, and maybe even the return of big multiplayer bosses like the Ur Dragon? In Dark Arisen, this encounter takes two forms: a static offline battle and an asynchronous online encounter, where players and their parties from around the world contribute online to take down the Ur Dragon. Over time, as players contribute their efforts towards the common goal, the Ur Dragon's global health will decline. Eventually, when it is killed by the first Arisen, the Ur Dragon will go into a grace period, where it will appear with very little to no health, and 1 to 15 hearts will be brightly lit. If anyone enters the Chambers of Lament during the grace period, they will have a chance to kill the Ur Dragon and obtain great rewards. This grace period is finite, and when over, a new generation spawns. A new and reworked multiplayer component to the sequel would surely provide some much needed replayability. Just add some more monster variety and a couple of new vocations, and it's going to give us hundreds of more gameplay hours. What's interesting is that we already find hints of how multiplayer might be a reality in the world of Dragon's Dogma 2, as recently pointed out by Chainsaw McFacepunch over on X. Here we see Faces pondering pawns and asking himself how exactly they managed to travel between worlds. Later, he ponders the link between time and space and the power required to accomplish world traversal. He further states, "It's interesting that there's a cut multiplayer mode and then also a hint within the game towards world mechanics that would allow for it. I found this before the data mine, so I thought it could be a hint for multiplayer in the sequel." These findings certainly point towards something more, and revisiting the theories created by Zappiroth, we find there is evidence that the story of Dragon's Dogma 2 is trying to include the lore presented to us in the online version of the game, more so than Dark Arisen. This part of the video contains spoilers for Dragon's Dogma Online, so bear that in mind. I want to share his Reddit post here, and I urge you guys to check out his latest DDon videos where he shares cutscenes from the game that might help us understand the connections he make take and the theories presented here. He states that the Black Knight is an arisen from another world, and while you could interpret that in many ways, what is fascinating about this is that we don't know any other worlds other than the false world and the real world. Grancis, Vermont, and Atoll being the former, and Lestania, Findham, and Acre-Selland being the latter. Zul is the Black Knight's pawn. However, unlike what the Western audience currently knows, Zul is actually a monster, much like how our pawn in Dragon's Dogma 2 turns into a shadow drake worm. The former two and the Black Dragon all herald from another world. In Dragon's Dogma 2, you stab yourself with the God's Bane, while on the Red Dragon, you both fall into the sea. He goes on to explain that in the opening cutscene of DDon, a golden dragon rises from the sea. It just so happens that I believe Phases will be responsible for these golden enemies, or his army of monsters. That golden dragon is called Golgoron, previously chosen by the White Dragon as newly arisen. Golgoron turned dragon due to Diamantus, who I have previously speculated to actually be Phases. What's more is that Phases stems from Hephaestus, who did exactly as described above, betraying the formerly arisen king and making them dragon, our likely fate at the end of Dragon's Dogma 2's expansion. Now I think Zapirot is onto something here, and together with the findings by Chainsaw McFacepunch, I hope the community can continue to lorecraft and dig deeper into the material presented in the sequel and Dragon's Dogma Online. I would love to hear your theories below in the comments, and I promise it won't take 3 months until the next video. It's good to be back, honestly. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed these theories by the community, and I'll see you guys in the next one.